and welcome to your show, SOUQ Pulse. Earlier part of the day, you will hear this direct line. It said, we shape policy and advance development. Then you know you're on SOUQ News. Here is all about positive programming. We always tell you, no matter what comes your way, what hits you, what information, what narrative that is out there, when you come to SOUQ News, you detox. You're not just only getting informed, you also become a solution. Then the business part of it. Then we talk productivity. Then you know you're on SOUQ Pulse. It's that time of the day where we'll tell you, go get your friends, your neighbors, those you're quarreling with, those you have issues with. This is time to talk. We'll tell you, here we don't keep quiet. And so we talk. So it doesn't matter what policy is affecting you. It doesn't matter what the papers, the prints are telling you in your own side or the neck of the wood or your nation, or what business are pushing, profits, losses, what the stock market is talking about right now, what the Asian market is talking about right now. A whole lot of people are running down to their portfolios and trying to grab, sell off, or get some hedge. But in all this, we just say, let's talk. Your talking can make somebody better, give someone an idea. This is SOUQ Pulse. Today, we'll be going way, way far from the African continent and also ask questions. My name is SOUQ, John Rogers SOUQ. Here, we'll have a nice, beautiful time. I'm also blessed to have a guest in our house, someone that has not been on SOUQ Pulse for a while. I'll get to introduce him and tell you what happened, where he's been, and the time zones that are still registering around here. Now, today on SOUQ Pulse, we'll be looking at Asia, to be specific, China. Where are we going to? We're looking at the policy of trade in China. What are the major pillars when it comes to trade and their policy in China? You'll be wondering why I'm pausing. So it will hit you. Then we'll ask ourselves directly this question. What can we emulate from it? Several weeks, several months, several analysts have come in here, both learned, both guests, both very informed people, and they've made a whole lot of analysis when it comes to China. But today we are dwelling on the trade. We'll bring out 4 major points, and that's what we'll be talking about. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please dust your ties, dust your seats. If you want to stand, no problem. Please join me as I welcome back to SOUQ Pulse, Dr. Itahosa Samaze. Sir, you're welcome to SOUQ Pulse.
Pleasure to be with you, Chooks, this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Are you still going through jet lag or time zone inhibitions, or you are not sure where you are? Are your ears tingling? Which one?
Well, the last time I heard this kind of conversation was from one of my philosophy lecturer who was talking about appearance and reality. And I remember telling him that I paid my way to the university, so I was in school to learn, and it was nobody paying the bill. I was paying it myself. So I was very real, and it was not imagined like they think in Western philosophy. So I told him, I'm the one here. It's not an appearance. So, Chooks, I am here. There's no jet lag. I know where I am. This is SOUQ News, and we say great Nigeria.
Yes, great Nigeria, great SOUQ, welcome. Now, for those that are wondering, very soon you'll get to see and witness augmented reality in this particular studio. So he says this is reality. It's a two-way talk. You never... I hope we don't tell you if it's real or if it's not real. You're welcome back to the studio. Let's leave the climate zone. Let's leave the climate zone for now. Yes, so today we are looking at China's trade policy, and we are asking ourselves directly, what can Africa learn? Now, for those that are wondering, in the last few weeks, in the last few months, Nigeria, for one, has gone through some protests. People are clamoring, shouting, hunger, hardship, work, good. It's cutting across Africa. Kenya gave the first red flag. Then we see countries that hitherto are looking very peaceful. Bangladesh, not too good. Britain, not too good.
Why will the Prime Minister run away?
Well, safety first. It's the living that fights.
Oh, my God.
The last I checked, the reality you talked about is the living that fights. Now, we are looking at asking questions. If we want to get productive, we ask questions. Okay, who is doing it? What are they doing? Even if they are going through any form of economic meltdown, recession, or selling much, stock going down, what did they do at the point where they were getting it right? So let's learn from them. Now, that's where we are heading to. And we're looking at this particular 14, standard trade policy and practices has been driven majorly on 4 priorities. 1, they are pushing indigenous innovation. So it doesn't matter what the premier or what the party gets to say. At the bottom line of it, the first one is indigenous innovation. The second one is driving self-sufficiency. The third one is enhancing national security. Now, it follows that one after the other. Then the last one, which everybody keeps talking about, is open market reform and opening their market. Now, we'll get there. We take them one by one. My happiness is that we'll have Dr. Idahosa here, and he's not going to jump any gun because we're taking them one by one. Then you also get to understand when we get to the last one, which everybody gets to hear, that we are the one. He will tell you more. Now, sir, let's look at this. Starting from the first one, pushing for indigenous innovation. What China is doing, what they did, what they are still doing, and what they'll keep doing. That we are not doing, that Africa is not doing.
Yeah.
Homegrown technology, state-sponsored tech acquiring. Whatever you need to add behind the acquiring, how it's acquired, we are not saying it, but we see it. Why is Africa not doing that route?
Well, it's you won't be able to talk about growth in a people's life without necessarily connecting it with their theology and philosophy.
Their theology and philosophy. Could that be a part of their culture? And
yes.
Okay.
So this is quite very fundamental. What we have lacked in Africa is that we have thrown away our philosophies, we've thrown away our theology, and embrace a hybrid which is neither true nor false.
When you mention hybrid, the first thing that comes to my mind is Chinese EVs.
Yeah, of
I am
course.
sorry. They've punctuated our mind to that extent.
Yeah, so that is what it is. So when you look at China as a country, what they have set out to do is to establish their racial superiority over every culture. So, really perpetuating the Chinese culture.
In China.
Not in China, globally.
But they started at home first.
They started at home. So that's why
and conquered the home.
No. That's what I'm coming to. You see, you have a philosophy of life. You have a theology that pushes you. And what you're trying to do is to push that theology globally. So that's why, where are you going to go to in the world? Is it the Americans? Is it the Indians? Is it Europe? Is it Africa? The best place to be is the Chinese restaurant. Do you know why? Because China they don't joke with their philosophy about life and their culture about life. So nobody can go there to say, oh, let's put China down. No. They are exalting their cultural superiority over every race. Even after the defeat by Great Britain during the Opium War, China had emerged to say there's something about us that we have to preserve. And I think this is fundamental. Now, let's take a look at this philosophy very briefly.
As you're taking a look at it, also talk about the education that is also within that
You see,
sector.
because your theology and your philosophy is actually your education.
Okay.
So, because what defines your education is your philosophy about life. And what they have been able to do is that they have interacted with the world and they have seen beautiful things in the world, but they don't want to allow those things to dilute their philosophy and their theology. So they only take what is good about it and see how to make it more China. Now, take for example, we know China to be a communist society, have we?
Yes.
Now,
On paper.
not on paper, they are purely communist society. Now, what is the difference between...
How communist is capitalist?
Now, this is the question. What is different about the Chinese communism was the fact that they saw the red Karl Marx and they saw the red Hegel, Friedrich Hegel, they read Lenin, who was the very first person to see how to bring Karl Marx to life, and started communism in the Soviet Union. Now, following the civil revolt of 1905 in Russia, when communism found its way into the Chinese Bolshevik Party. Now, what happened was the fact that in communism that they were advocating was the fact that human beings like Europe think and articulated are perpetually and naturally good. So they don't need to be controlled. And so they were going to be asked to just live their life and do some work. Now, when Lenin started this practice, what happened? People fell into laziness. And so when Joseph Stalin came and took over from Lenin, he discovered that these guys don't want to work, but they want to eat. So he weathered the iron rod to beat them to work. Because state cannot control this. So, but what Chinese took away from socialism or communism was the fact that let state control and direct their affairs. But the Chinese, we say this parable everywhere, the Chinese proverb that if you give man a fish, you feed him for one day. But if you train him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's a fundamental philosophy of life. So for China, it's not about handouts. For China, it's about you as an individual who is highly productive and contributing to your society.
To the last word you just said, it's more of a traditional crime not to work.
That is what it is. So culturally, laziness is prohibited. And that's why you find that even people who are pilfering or stealing is defined to be laziness. And so the way to treat that is capital punishment. So these are the issues that is defining who the Chinese people are.
That's a very serious one. If we continue on this trajectory, we won't finish this first one and the time is going to run out. But let's try and see how fast we can go. Look at the education. State-focused, sponsored education.
Now, this is what it is.
Where is Africa getting it wrong? Because we still have state-sponsored, but it might not be focused.
Now, again, you go back to what it is. When Chairman Mao came into office, the first thing he did was to shut out China from the rest of the world for over 30 years. No aircraft landed in China or took off. The seaports were closed. The roads were closed. And in that period of 30 years, they trained themselves to speak one language. And the multiplicity of all the languages gave way to one language. Now you see what education can do. So it was a focused program. And to say this is where we want to build leverage. So we are not going to be fighting ourselves. We want a one single China that is united by language and by culture. And within that space of 30 years, they built a new China with a new culture. So what that means is that education for them is taken serious. It's not the kind of education that we are looking at here, which is education about how to read and write so that it can become clear to some people. Now, this formal education in China is really targeted to people who go to school and they are able to translate theory into practice.
Okay.
In 2009,
Okay.
I did establish a factory in Benin. And the machines were imported from China. And they said to me they were sending expatriates. Guess who came? They were boys from secondary school. One of them was the first time of traveling. And he was about 18 years. The other one has traveled a couple of times, who was about 25 years. These were the expatriates that came to assemble the entire machine. And when I saw them, I felt, I said, what's the guy doing?
And they did the job.
And they got on the factory, dismantled, assembled the machine in less than 2 days. So this is what we're talking about. So it's not just that people go to school and say, you get to school, you can't even tie a boat. They fixed the machine, not even a recourse back to the factory. To say, oh, we have confusion here, we cannot fix it.
Okay. We are still pushing for indigenous innovation. Now, this is, when I look at the four and I go back and say trade policy on these four things, which means they are very intentional. Before we even get to the real thing, we think about, okay, trade is even working. Let's get to this. National focus on product manufacturing. And this has to do with product chain from A to Z, from raw material to finished product. And everyone across the chain is held accountable and responsible. Make it here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is Africa waiting for?
Yeah, there's a lot that we need to deal with. And that's why, for example, when people talk about colonialism and its impact on us, which dealt a very huge blow on us that we are still struggling to get out of.
How long are we going to blame colonialism?
Yeah, we see, because you see, all the relics of colonialism are with us. And this was the point I was making yesterday.
Japan occupied China for a very long time.
Yes.
England occupied China for a very long time.
Yes.
Same thing with India. England, China, England, India.
Yeah, but you see, take for example, when colonialism came in here and they saw the structure in the north, they didn't want to touch it. So they left it as it is. But there were some doses of these things that was in there. But what did we meet in the north? There were a lot of confusion in terms of human beings who came, moved into that region, who naturally would have been the minority, and eventually turned majority as it is now. And this guy came, occupied the entire place. And then, of course, the culture of the people were displaced. Now, one of the things that China has learned from history is the fact that when you look at the Greek civilization, one of the things that they were pursuing was the fact on how to make every place they conquer fully Greek people. So, once you impose your culture on a people, then these people are dead. So, their attempt to impose their culture on the Jew failed. And that was why you find that there were serious persecution of the Jews, because they are people who believe that they don't want to mix. So when you get to that point where people emphasize their cultural superiority, then you are fine. But what do you have here? We only respect people that they are intelligent because they can speak Queen's English, even when they are not making sense with their arguments.
That's a serious point. Now, let's move to the second one, because if we keep here, we won't go far. Driving self-sufficiency. These are pillars on which they base their trade policy. Driving self-sufficiency. Service the home first.
Yeah.
So whatever they are producing, they produce for the home first. And those at home consume it first.
Yeah, but you see, that was the whole idea. They call it the dual circulation strategy. What is it all about? We are not just going to be beautiful outside, but internally we have to be very beautiful. So the whole idea of shutting their borders was to ensure that they have to take pride in themselves. And I made this point very clearly in a natural medicine agency yesterday. They take pride in themselves. We hate ourselves. We talk down on ourselves.
As
As
Nigerians.
Nigerians, as Africans.
Okay.
So until somebody get to the UK or get to Oxford, he has done nothing.
Because that is the standard somebody somewhere have
yes,
told him.
I said, like somebody once argued. You've been to University of Ife, you've been to University of Ibadan to do your first degree, second degree. Then you go to Oxford to do 1 week program. And then you are bragging around the environment as Oxford graduates. So this is the inferiority complex in Africa that is not even making us to look inward to see that there are things that are beautiful about us that we should be promoting. And so what we are promoting is the fact that we see, oh, this is what Ebo said we should do, and this is what is right. So I was somewhere in one of the teaching hospitals in Edo State, Irwa Specialist Hospital, and I was talking with a guy there, and I said to him, the doctor, look at it. There are a lot of activities happening around you. Even you know things that you cannot resolve. You say to the traditional people, how can our school system integrate these traditional people, even in the area of pharmaceuticals alone, to say, yes, these people have cure. How are they doing it? How do we study it so that we can replicate it to the world? Our educational system is not focused on that. So this is a problem. So everybody who succeed study their environment, because the cure to the problem of your environment, nature also has situated it within your environment.
Okay. Now let's also look at part of that driving self-sufficiency. They have a consumption rate and a stockpile at every time, which means they don't depend on you to come save them. Why is Africa always depending on handouts? Waiting for one subvention, waiting for... At every point in time, we are waiting for help from somewhere.
Yeah, well, I've made that clear to you. So the Chinese culture says, if we give you fish, we can only feed you for 1 day, and that's not worth the while. What's worth the while is train you on how to fish. So the emphasis is on work and productivity. And this is why I've always been advocating here the dangerous effect of liberal democracy on prosperity.
When you say liberal democracy, can you break it down?
Now, what I mean is a conception of governance that government answers to the question, which is, of course, had become a religion. God, government of the day. So many Africans are now worshiping governments because this is a byproduct of liberal democracy.
Instead of building their nations, building their communities.
Yes, of course. So they are now worshiping governments. So government have to provide labor, government has to provide healthcare, government has to provide water, government has to provide electricity.
Because they have put too much power on the government in the first place.
See, but this is what the danger of liberal democracy is. Because we have taken democracy to the extreme. Its original conception from the ancient Greek state is not meant to be the supplier of wood and the fetchers of water. The real foundation of democracy is capitalism, which is individual prosperity.
Based on your productivity.
Yes, of course, you can't prosper when you are not productive. So capitalism is based on individual prosperity. That the individual man is given the opportunity to unleash his potential and develop the creative energy that nature or God has deposited in him.
Okay, before you get very fired up and get angry at Africa, now let's also look at this part of the driving self-sufficiency. Buy made in China and China first policy within them and outside them.
Yeah.
But we see the reverse here in Africa. We take pride in it's not from here.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. It's compensation for felt inadequacy, which they call inferiority complex.
You think it's a complex thing?
I can tell you over and over again, the problem of Africa is inferiority complex. Whether they are elite, who are trained, they say they went to Oxford or Harvard, they are very, very low in self-esteem. That is a problem. And that is why we always want to take a cue from what they are doing. We want them to validate us. We want them to tell us what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, because we cannot define ourselves. So the challenge of Africa is the challenge of the loss of identity.
A loss of identity.
Identity, yes.
Okay. Now, while we look and focus on that particular last line, loss of identity, it's heavy, it's big. And this is a continent of well over 1.6 billion people. We pulled out 4 major pillars on which they stand their trade policy. And you now start wondering, they are not just articulative, they are very intentional about it. They have not even talked or story about buying and selling or pushing or importing or exporting to you. But the pillars on which these policies, past, present, and the one that will come, are hinged, tells you a people that know where they are going. So we're asking ourselves, what and where can Africa tap in and learn? We have Dr. Idahosa here, and I tell you, if you've missed the first half of this particular program, you need to calm down. Take the last bit, then go back and watch it. It's not difficult. Just go on YouTube and look for SOUQ News TV, or go on Facebook, same thing. SOUQ News TV, go on Instagram, SOUQ News TV. And if you have a smartphone, go on the web and look for SOUQnews.com. I promise you, you will be glad you did. Then come back and thank me later. Also follow us on every of those social media handles you heard us say. Now, we've gone the first 2. We've gone on pushing indigenous innovation, driving self-sufficiency. Now we are going on enhancing national security. Now, if you listen to Doc in the first part, you understand that the first 2 comes, then enhancing national security, because they've achieved the first 2. You need to hear the last one. Now, let's look at it this way. Whatever our trade is with any country, whatever our trade is across any border, once we've achieved the first 2, the next one is enhancing national security. Is Africa trading with their own security in mind?
You see, that is a problem. You see, look at China diplomacy. It's based on leveraging on soft power. We are not going to focus on hard power, but soft power. So, how do you enhance your security? You enhance your security by first making yourself very prosperous, and then you are able to reach out to people. You remember, let me give you this background to this. You know, if you read the Bible, the story of Solomon, who had how many wives?
800 plus, or 700.
700 wives with 300 concubines, side chicks.
That's 1,000 plus.
1,000. Now, Solomon was not just marrying because he had a lust for women. Solomon was engaged in strategic diplomacy with all hostile nations by taking wives from every kingdom and knowing fully well that if you are a king and I marry your daughter, you won't fight me now because we are in-law. So when you look at the life of Solomon, and the Bible says all his life there was peace. Because he married around his neighbors, and the neighbors are not willing to fight him. In short, as a matter of fact, they were bringing fire and wood to help him build his empire.
And feed their daughters.
Oh, yes, of course. They need to support him to feed their daughter. This is what Chinese are doing. So we're not looking for security, want to build. No. That's not the focus. The focus is saying, how do we get into trade arrangements with people You have a problem, we can help you solve it. So we become friends. So you don't have so much of enemies.
This needs to be studied. Now, they're also looking at, now, within this enhancing national
But don't
security,
marry 1,000 wives.
in this economy, the last person on history that tried it is from somewhere in Niger State. I think as we speak, he's still seeking help. No trade, no agreement, none must compromise safety of her citizens.
Yeah.
Now, they're also looking at health. They're looking at sovereignty. They're looking at dependency.
Oh, yeah.
At no point in time should any agreement make us dependent on
another
any nation.
Yeah.
But we see African countries getting into policies, taking loans that someone else dictates how you run some particular things in your country, how you sack human beings away from work, how you cut or don't cut tariff, subsidy, how you run organizations in your country. But this is China that is, where exactly are we getting it wrong? Is it the people that are there or the same complex issue you're talking about?
Now, when you look at it from the Chinese point of view, you see a China who has made itself into a leader of a sort that people follow. You see, there's a small parable they say in my village that dogs says they follow a man with pot belly. Not because they like his face, because they know it's either the man will poo or the man will vomit. Whichever one, they have some food to eat. So when dogs follow a man that has a pot belly, you know what he's looking for. So this is what China has been able to do. So you have been able to perfect yourself and position yourself, not going into negotiation with empty stomach. And that's why I keep emphasizing here that most African leaders and African people have the insult mentality. Give us porridge. What has birthright? What value is birthright to a man who is dying? I will perish now if I don't eat. That's our mentality. And in every conversation that we are having, national conversation, you see this mentality.
Save us now.
Yes. If we don't eat now, we die. I said to people, no standing in brief for Babangida.
Who is that?
Ibrahim Babangida.
Who is he?
The former president, military head of state in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah. During the SOUQ program,
Okay.
we got into trouble with SOUQ, not because SOUQ as a policy was bad in itself. What was structural adjustment program? That we needed to deal with structural issues that were very defective in our conversation. And what was the foundation of SOUQ was the fact that you have to grow what you eat and eat what you grow.
But the Ibrahim Badamosi Babangida, was he doing that?
Now what happened? Why this implementation was ongoing?
The implementation of SAP.
Of SOUQ was ongoing. There was a whole lot of pressure. And we decided to whittle down SOUQ by introducing the very element that SOUQ was intended to take away. Because when you look at SOUQ in Asia, it worked.
But SAP could have worked in Asia depending on their peculiarities.
No, it's not peculiarity. What I'm talking about to you is this: if we don't eat or die. Look at it. What are we talking about today in Nigeria? We are talking about subsidy removal, where people want first-class facility that is fully paid for by government. What is the argument on the street? By elite, who say they are speaking for the masses. And they are telling you that why we got make petrol to be this cheap, this expensive. We want to buy petrol at 200 naira without imagining or thinking about the input that gets into the purchases of these things. So even when China is a socialist economy, things are bought.
Okay. Now let's come back to the national security issue as it concerns Africa, because we are the ones that negotiate deals and get into trade agreements without really thinking it through.
Yeah, because we're hungry. When you negotiate on an empty stomach, you carry the Esau mindset. If I don't eat this red pottage, I will not live the next day. So take my birthright and just give me a pot of porridge.
Okay. Now, before the entire June 12th issue, Babangida, before the entire Shonikon issue, Babangida, before the entering government and the SOUQ, SOUQ came all before.
The reason that spoiled his regime was the fact that if he has allowed the transition to happen, which he said by himself, he would have had his name written in gold in the history of Nigeria. Yes,
even with SOUQ?
Even with
we
the
know
SOUQ, yes.
A lot of companies, a lot of conglomerates, a lot of companies died thanks to SOUQ.
No, they shouldn't have died.
How it was structured.
They shouldn't have died.
And
you see, the issue here, the issue here is what we are talking about. Is how are we going to be self-reliant? That we are not depending or we are not vulnerable to the shocks in Western countries.
It's not just Western countries.
See, this is primarily because even when we made a stance as Africans and the entire third world that we said we were not aligned, that was only in paper because we were actually aligned to the West. And up to tomorrow, we are still tied to the apron string of these Western countries. So this is a problem. So we take instruction from them. And that is why your elections cannot be seen to be credible until you go to Chatham House to go and have a debate. Okay. Even when you are not willing to face your media in the house.
Okay, did you just shake those tables? Okay, now for those that are wondering, once we call names here, we make sure that you get to understand who the person is and what era the person came. So let's get this straight. Now also, let's look at the issue of national security. We're not living there yet. We get to see concessions in Africa. Several forms of concession, be it seaport, be it roads, be it any form of infrastructure, and a foreign country, sometimes a foreign company, not even a country, come and get into agreement for dams. Then down the line, some African countries default. Then some of these properties now get into the hands of non-African countries or non-African companies. To what extent are we letting our guards down and the security and sovereignty of African countries down in these concessions?
That's why I said to you, there's no way you can be talking about national prosperity without first a recourse to the theology and the philosophy of a people. Recently, when the Bangladesh issue started, some group of Bangladesh who were living in the UAE staged a protest on the street against their home government. The Dubai government arrested all of them that were involved, charged them to court, sentenced them for insurrection, and sent them to their home country for detention.
So they didn't want them to use taxpayers' money in feeding them in their own jails.
Protest is forbidden here.
Okay.
So you can't do it here. So for doing it here, you have committed an offense.
That's
punishable.
In UAE.
In UAE. Okay. And then, of course, bundle all of them with their sentences and send them back to their home country. See, this is people who don't want their culture to be defiled by other people. We are hearing from the police source now that even the end bad governance protests.
We're
talking about national security.
No,
that even foreigners are arrested.
Who?
The police just made a statement. Foreigners from Spain are arrested
Which of the,
along in Kano, burning things down. So this tells you some of the issues. That's why I'm talking about us tied to the apron string of the West. In our mentality, it's not just the governing authority alone. Even we. That is why you are seeing, we're talking about issues of forest management by our banks, because all our elite want their children to go to Harvard or Cambridge. When there's a University of Lagos here, there's University of Ibadan, there's University of Ife, Uniben. We have over 180 universities. Our elite cannot send their children here because until they go to Europe or America, there's no education. These are the issues. This is why I tell you the problem is complex.
the problem is complex?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is it that the problem is complex or the problem is complex as in is double-fold, triple-fold? How complex, or is it inferiority complex?
Inferiority complex.
Okay, I really didn't want to go there, but it's better it came from you. Now, let's now get to the last part, the last cornerstone on which their trade policy is hedged. Now, this is the part everyone gets to hear. This is the part that is always in the media. Market reform and opening up the market. Now I get to ask, if they have taken care of the entire innovation, if they have taken care of every single thing that has to do with sustainability, if they have taken care of security, and they've now come out to the entire globe and say, okay, we are opening up our market, can you compete with them?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, but you see, this is...
I don't know if you know where I'm coming from. Can you compete with them? You just say, okay, we've opened up our own. Open your own. And they bring the product. How will your own product compete?
That's it. See, when you look at it, they call it pragmatic economic considerations. That is what pillar the Chinese trade policies are built on. And is as flexible as you can think. They are watching house. I told you about the dual circulation strategy, that yes, we have to sell outside, but we must develop our local market. So that even if people say they don't want us, we have it numbers. We can trade with ourselves and still be very successful. And say they are doing integration. So by the time they have perfected their trade, they have raised up sons, as scripture will call it, sons. People who knew what Chinese stand for. Then we can send them outside because they cannot be corrupted.
But if we get to also see a lot of the trade the Chinese, be it the government or private, does in most other countries, they trade with you, but in the form of either you are sending them just raw materials, most times not finished products. Then they now come to your own country and establish a whole lot of industry and factories, and now trade from China to those industries.
Yeah.
But most times, Africa think Africa is trading with China, but China is trading with China in your country.
Yes.
What can Africa learn? How can we just wake up one day, maybe somebody poured ice cold water on us and we learn?
But that is what I'm saying to you. They said you cannot give what you don't have.
How can we start having what we can give?
That is the starting point, and that is where we need the huge reform. We will be a joke until we revolutionize our education sector. Because the greatest disaster in Africa is our educational system that is processing people for foreign jobs.
But do we see it?
Yeah, but this is the issue. So we need to have that conversation. So how are we going to be processing people for the development of our locality so that we can study our environment and our institutions are creating solutions to the problems within our environment? Now, until we start that reform and see how we can recreate the mind of this younger generation that are coming, that the West is not a standard, that everybody can set their standard in their own way, Because what is important is that once you meet with success, success has very plenty friends, plenty parents. It's only failure that is an orphan. The day you become successful, everybody will identify with you. So what we should do is to look inward. And this is why I'm actually speaking to our own government in Nigeria today. That look, no matter how hungry we are, we have to grow what we eat. That is the final solution. Importation cannot happen. What if there's a meltdown to another world closure tomorrow? The ships are not moving. How are you going to get the rice? How are you going to get the grain? So we must not be listening to the voices of people who have no understanding how economy works, just only because they want to score political cheap points. A country that does not have food security cannot be thinking about physical security. So, first and foremost, is for us to be able to develop capacity so that we can have food security. That even when we are not going to buy anything from the outside, at least we are able to feed ourselves. And this is what will give us pride as a nation.
Okay. It's been a beautiful 50 good minutes. 50 minutes well spent. 10 minutes belongs to SOUQ News. And you guys on the other side. I want to say thank you very much, Dr. Dausa, for coming on SOUQ Pulse. I wish you had extra time. I wanted to just sit down here and just keep smiling, because when I look out there, I guess you're as quiet as me. You're wondering, how did we get here? Yes, those are the conversations we should be having. Thank you very much for coming on SOUQ Pulse.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. I want to see a Nigeria that works, where everybody is hardworking,
Yes.
providing for itself and creating prosperity,
Yes.
which of course will cumulate to the national prosperity.
Yes. For those wondering, when he made a mention of the Nigeria Natural Medicine Development Agency, we were at that particular place yesterday. That was Wednesday, to sign an MOU. Why? Because natural medicine is indigenous to us, and if we don't push it, nobody will push it for us. And there was one particular statement you made yesterday that I took home. You said Nigeria will be good in your lifetime.
Oh, yes. I believe it.
So it depends on you. Will your country, will your African country be good in your lifetime? Then you have a part to play. It doesn't matter what the news or the narrative is saying. Stand up, play it, and be counted. Thank you very much for being part of SOUQ Pulse today. We'll do this again tomorrow. Happens to be a beautiful Friday. See you.